A sloppy game filled with turnovers led to a disappointing finish for the Pitt Panthers against Boston College on Saturday. Was the defense tired after putting up incredible numbers all year long? Or were the four turnovers too much for the team to overcome? We look at the cause of this ugly finish to the season and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today. Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world!
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of December 7th, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Pam.
Yikes. That was a depressing end to the season. Only a few weeks ago, we were talking Orange Bowl. And now, we're talking maybe the worst. We're going to try to sort it all out today. Woof. At least finals week's coming up. Pam, I know it's not the best time of year right now, seeing how Pitt football's done the last 2 weeks, but we'll have some positivity on today's show, won't we?
Oh, yeah. A bunch of the other sports are doing very, very well. So they will make our show positive because of their success, not the football team.
Yep. Pitt Athletics is more than just the football team, but Vince, really, they are the team that we measure our joy and despair against. And right now, I'd probably say the majority of Pitt Panther fans not in a good mood.
Yeah, it drives the bus for sure, and it seems to have driven off a cliff these past 2 weeks. Not a lot of positivity surrounding the football team, but we're going to try to put a positive spin on it today.
We will, and we'll sort it out. We'll talk Pitt hoops, talk men's and women's. We'll talk volleyball and everything going on with the Pitt Panthers. You can follow us at H2P Show on Twitter and Instagram, and we hope you and your family had a very happy and full Thanksgiving. I know I did. I'm just getting over it. I feel like I nap harder the rest of the year after Thanksgiving, and especially with finals coming up for any Pitt students listening. This is a happy time of year. Stressful, but the end of the tunnel is very near. And Pam, we got the email address cooking as well for everybody to hit us up to.
Yeah, hail to Pitt podcast at gmail.com. We want to know your thoughts on everything and some ideas for next week. We will give our regular season review, maybe share some topics you want us to hit on as we wrap up the Pitt football season next week in full conclusion.
Yeah, holler at us and let us know also what bowl game you're hoping for. I mean, it's not really the pick of the litter, but we'll discuss some of it today. And, of course, next week we'll have a bowl game to talk about as that matchup will get set for Pitt on Sunday. And, of course, we always appreciate any feedback you give us on any social media at H2P Show, like we said, but also on Reddit, on Panther Lair. We're everywhere talking Pitt sports, so appreciate you engaging with us. And subscribe to the show, of course. Leave a review and tell any Pitt fans you know about the program, as Vince likes to say. Quick news tidbits. Like I said, finals next week for Pitt students. Very stressful time of year. Could we maybe attribute that to the Pitt football team's lack of performance? I don't know. I'm not making any excuses for anybody. All I'm saying is that there's construction in front of the cathedral, and nobody's in a good mood, Vince.
No, this is a stressful time of year. Maybe not the most stressful week, but it's certainly approaching that.
Also, we'll be talking Pitt men's hoops, but real quick, shout out to them as they got some wins under their belt since we last convened, Pam. They're number 69 in the KenPom rankings. very nice that they've jumped up into the standings there, and that's a very, very well respected analytical look at the college basketball rankings, according to Ken Pom, who's very world renowned when it comes to college hoops.
Yeah, some people use strictly Ken Pom rankings when they pick their brackets at the end of the year. It's very people will look at the analytics if they're wagering a little bit on games as well, or just trying to prove a point is what team's better. So them climbing up is great in those rankings.
Yeah, and they're 59 in some other rankings, but Ken Pom is really the standard, and the fact that Pitt's there just shows you how big these wins they've gotten are that we're going to talk about, and that the numbers are now supporting the notion that Pitt men's hoops is on the rise. And last little piece of news here before we dive into the football game: Pitt lost to Boston College. The insult to injury after that game is that BC beat Pitt, and then they said, "Wow, what a win!" and they fired their coach, Steve Adazio, gone. From Chestnut Hill there, Vince. That just makes Pitt look worse, I think. It doesn't really matter, but the fact that a team beat you and then they just fired their coach is just kind of ugh.
I did not see that coming. And then all of a sudden on whenever that was, late Sunday, my goodness. I
was shocked, but also now it kind of explains why. I don't know if you saw his on the field interview after the game. Probably not, right? You both were there, but Adazio was like almost in tears after the game. Like, it wasn't that emotional of a victory for them, I didn't think, watching as a fan, but he was really, very emotional. He was on the verge of tears pretty much, and they got their win to go bowling. That was big, but yeah, and now he doesn't get to enjoy it. He'll be gone, and that just makes the Pitt program look I don't know what the hell happened. Let's get into it. The last 2 weeks, Pam, it really all season long was the same story each and every single game. And in this game in particular, early on, you knew it wasn't going to be good when the same player was getting the same penalty over and over again. And the Panthers also committed a bunch of turnovers and couldn't stop A.J. Dillon. It was just a mess.
Yeah, this whole game from the start, you knew they weren't coming back. Quick word about Adazio. He's one of like the 10 college coaches that I actually like. So I think he'll land on his feet somewhere. And Boston College has been like 500. I don't think he's ever had a winning season, but I know he's well respected amongst his players. So like you said, that's probably why he got a little emotional there. But A.J. Dillon just ran through the Panthers throughout the whole game, and then especially in the second half of the fourth quarter when they needed to stop. And we talked about how I personally think he's one of the top 3 running backs maybe in the nation, at least top 5. You have him, you have J.K. Dobbins, you have ETN, and Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. So I think A.J. Dillon's right up there in that group, and
I'd put him
ran through this
defense.
He did.
I'd put him. I will say, just credit to the Canadian Cowboy down there at Oklahoma State. I also would throw him in the mix with
Chubba Hubbard.
Those.
Yeah, there's your 5 right there.
You're really good running backs, and yeah, he was just. I mean, the end of that game. I mean, that was just
horrible.
Grown-up football player right there. He just looked on another level. He looked like how James Conner used to look going against some defenses where he just turned it on and there was no stopping him.
Yeah, and we're going to be focusing a lot on the offense, I think, talking about this game. But we can't necessarily give the defense a free pass, as you guys have pointed out, and couldn't get the ball back at the end of the game when needed to. And Pam, something you brought up and said that they were never in this game. Pitt did take the lead in the second half.
But did you feel good about that?
Well, even if I did, it wasn't for very long because in 3 plays, Boston College had scored. And that's something, they finally got the lead. The defense could have really made a statement and help clamp down on this game and got a stop, but they didn't. They gave the lead right back, and the Panthers were never able to recover.
I knew the game was over when Nolan Ulizio got 2 penalties in a row, got pulled, and then his backup gave a sack. I threw my hands up and said, one of those days, because that's when, and then the turnovers started rolling in. It was just a comedy of errors. And I don't understand how they were so unprepared. I mean,
it's the same thing we've talked about all year. It's like lack of discipline or something. I don't understand how they get so many penalties
early in the game too. I mean, it's just
right.
So
at home.
Yeah,
like
they're down on the 1 yard line, about to do look like a QB sneak, I think it was, and go in for a touchdown. There's a false start. It backs them up to the 6 yard line, and they got to settle for a field goal. I mean, just killer penalties like that just hurt so bad.
You think Tazier Mack not being on the field, I mean, it was noticeable, but how much of a factor do you think that was, Pam?
I don't think it was much of a factor. One of my biggest issues on the offensive side of the ball this game, I know the offensive line was bad. I also thought Pickett held the ball too long. And that he held the ball too long, and I felt like he stepped into some of the sacks that he took too at times. He didn't look comfortable in that pocket either. I feel like these were some of the issues he had very early on in the year and then improved upon it. I felt like he fell back into that. I know the offensive line wasn't good, but at the same time, even when Pickett was able to get some of the passes off, he just didn't look comfortable back there. And Boston College's defense is terrible.
They were not very good this year, but yet somehow they got a lot of pressure on Pickett. I got to go back and rewatch the tape of this game, as hard as that may be, because I thought
with a bottle of wine.
And Pickett there was a bad interception, from what I remember. And I thought he played in not his best game. But then I looked at the stats, and he was 30 for 40 for over 300 yards.
That's why you can't just look at stats.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It seemed like he played much worse than what the numbers would have indicated. But, if you look at that in a 75% completion percentage on 40 passes, that would indicate that his accuracy was pretty good. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it. To me, the drop passes and like the penalties that you alluded to, Alan, as long as the turnovers, especially some of those fumbles in the second half, A.J. Davis fumbling that ball when Pitt looked like it was finally getting something going. I mean, that to me is kind of really what lost this game. I'm not going to put this on this loss on Kenny Pickett or him being the reason that the offense was sputtering. I don't think.
No, but also, I think it was just a whole combination of bad things, that the offensive line, the penalties, the fumbles, and then the fact that they couldn't run the ball really even.
They didn't really try.
No, they didn't. And that's
2 weeks in a row where we saw very little commitment to the running game.
And honestly, not even that upset about that, because I feel like Pitt, without the turnovers, they and the penalties stalling drives, like, I think they could have moved this ball. They moved the ball a bit on this defense, this not great defense. And, next week when we do our season review, I think ultimately I'm not of the opinion that, oh my God, this Whipple offense has to go and I don't want to see it again. I do want to see it again. I just want to know how you're going to fix all of the mistakes and why they happened, because the penalties and the turnovers were horrible. And he had 2 freshmen in this game commit some of the turnovers. And I mean, this late in the season, I don't care if you're a freshman. You shouldn't be holding the ball like a loaf of bread. You need to be aware. There's just such a lack of awareness all over that offense all season long. And this might have been, I'm going to say it, the worst loss for them, at least as a unit, all season long. And that's saying something, Pam.
Oh, yeah, I think it's easily their worst loss because even though I mean, as a unit, even though the only other one I'd put up there might be Miami, but I had a weird feeling about that game going into it. This, I felt like, "Okay, let's end the season on a high
At
note."
least their defense is littered with NFL talent. This was
Right, their
Boston
defense is up
College.
there with one of their top
Well,
talents.
well, you got to say last week against Virginia Tech, they were shut out. So
But even then, though, their defense is good.
Yeah, and that was Bud Foster's last game, Vince. I'll give him a pass.
oh,
Even in the
I
rain,
forgot about that.
in the rain.
Yeah.
In the rain.
This was home.
Do we have Frank Beamer coming on in the booth?
This was home against Boston College with a lame duck coach at the end of the year.
8-point favorite.
8-point favorite. You know, weather was not really a factor. And you played like what you were in Blacksburg for Bud Foster's last game. That offense played like wait, you were in the stands. Were you booing the offense when they were on the field trying to get in their heads or something? Why were they so bad?
I don't know why they were so bad. One thing I will say about Narduzzi, is, and we're going to probably be talking about this next week, and there's already people talking about this, is, how, yeah, he hasn't had the best of records here, but if you look in terms of games that he's supposed to win, he has done very well. This was, North Carolina aside, he's done very well in games that he's supposed to win. He hasn't lost very many of those. This was certainly one of them. And this just seems at a really bad time, a home game, in year 5 of this regime with the talent that this team has, you shouldn't have these kind of performances. You really shouldn't.
You think they'll fire Narduzzi and hire Adazio?
Ooh.
I didn't think about that, but there's probably some people out there that would be all for it.
Well, I went around. I mean, I went deep into the Pitter net after that game. I didn't see anybody saying that, at least, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, the heat check on Narduzzi's coaching seat is definitely happening. I mean, there was all sorts of talk among fans online, of course, but even in the papers. I saw Paul Zeiss even wrote an article, Pam, about this, and he said something has to change with Narduzzi, but he didn't say what. And I think, that's an interesting take, is that a lot of people think something has to change, but what? Is it another shuffling of the offensive coordinator? I don't know. I would say no. Is it maybe making another change when it comes to his staff, or maybe a philosophy change? I don't think so even there. So, I would say Narduzzi's stubbornness this year bit Pitt real bad a couple of times, but it also, benefits him because he's stuck to his guns and has built up a pretty damn good defense. But offensively, that's where the big questions lie. What moves does he make for the offense? I don't know, but I say you start with what we saw in this game in particular. Discipline. Get some discipline on offense, because it was nowhere on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, he stuck to his guns, and I personally think it cost them more games than helped them, but we can get into that at a later time. But what about recruiting better on the offensive side of the ball? I mean, we've seen now after a few years, like the defense, they've recruited well on the defensive side, and that's been a priority, and it paid off this year. It'll be interesting to see the next few classes or guys that are on the team now, how they develop this offensive talent that's in there. And maybe they need some help on the offensive line as well.
Well, they certainly do. There was a lot of changes this year, and you look at a lot had to go right, and you look at like a game against Duke or a game against like Central Florida where they were scoring a lot of points, and we thought that this offense was going to turn out to be pretty good, and yet these last 2 weeks it was just awful, and you got to really scratch your head, like, what was different? It's hard to really understand what was going on here, like what changed in through the season. Were other teams catching on? I don't know if Boston College did anything that was really that exotic on defense from what I see. But then, some of the stuff that was helping them earlier in the year, like guys like Vincent Davis, guys like Malik Carter, and yet in this game against Boston College, those guys were hardly anywhere to be found. Vincent Davis had a few touches, but Malik Carter, I don't think he touched the ball at all. He barely even played.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. You talked about maybe a lack of talent. I mean, those are two of your most explosive players, yet they didn't play in this game very much in this game for some reason. I'm just not getting that.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lack of talent when it comes to beating Boston College. Let's get that argument out of the way. Yes, Pitt, of course, you always need to recruit better and get talented players. But when it comes to some of the losses Pitt had this year, they were talented enough to beat most of these teams. Honestly, to have the talent to go into Blacksburg and beat Bud Foster in his last game, you need something special. Okay, give him the negative knock there in terms of recruiting offensively, but they had the guys to beat Boston College. They weren't utilized. You were missing one guy in action, but other guys were just totally absent. You didn't. The thing about Whipple's offense I noticed this year was that thing doesn't call for anybody to get forced the ball at all, and maybe was that a detriment, Pam? Because it was pretty freewheeling in terms of giving Kenny Pickett the option to decide who gets the ball and when, instead of just, making sure a guy like Malik Carter's getting the ball out in space. They did it a couple of times. You saw like when they fed him the ball at the end of the Duke game, and that guy showed that he is a special player at times. They did it with Maurice French on occasion, but overall, that was few and far between. I think they had the players talented enough to do stuff like that, but maybe that was the offensive philosophy, or maybe they just didn't step up. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say if they didn't step up or not, but I do like at certain times you have to feed certain people the ball if there's a matchup you want to exploit. That's why you scout and do all that. So I do think maybe that needs to change. Not all the time and not forcing it and, over forcing it to a certain guy and then causing turnovers. But if you have a guy that is able to run through people, give him the ball. Have a bell cow back there and just plow through people and take over games. So maybe that's something off the offense they need to change a little bit.
And I think they did try. They may have tried,
but they kept abandoning it.
I realize that, but obviously they, they're at times they were able to get some things going in this game with AJ Davis, and then just fumbled the ball away. And you got to think, if they didn't fumble this,
that's one instance.
Well, I'm just saying
that's one instance. He's been very good.
He's very good, and I think he's played well all year. But they had, I'm not saying just him. He's not the only one that dropped the ball in this game. But if they didn't have these 4 turnovers, I think Pitt wins this game pretty easily because there were several of those turnovers on their own half of the field, and defense was even able to hold them to field goals. You got to think Boston College's, they ran for 260 yards in this game, but I don't think they would have had that much success had it not been for the takeaways that they had. The more I think about it, the more I got to put this loss squarely on these turnovers. I understand Pitt did not play a perfect game in any other facet of it. But I think that was, the most killer thing that happened.
Because they lost the time of possession, 35-25. That's significant for an offense like Pitt, where at times it's not like a one-strike offense, a big splash play offense. Occasionally you saw it. So having the time of possession is very key. And that turnover, those constant turnovers just had them lose that battle as well.
Well, I'll say this. At least Pitt's going bowling because now they get the extra practices, and strength and conditioning are a must because the red zone offense especially is just horrible. It was bad all year long. The discipline, I think, is tops, and then you put number 2, red zone offense, strength and conditioning, the push up front. Got to get running backs stronger, fallen forward more, and of course that offensive line needs to really pick it up next year. And this game was so painfully a microcosm of the entire season in terms of everything that went wrong for a team that, damn it, could have had 10 wins, no joke. And they did this on the graphic for the ESPN broadcast. I mean, last year Pitt, and this year the margin of Pitt being a 10-win team versus what it actually ended up being, it was so minor, but the little things 2 years now have gotten the Panthers shoved them into mediocrity when they could have been considered maybe one of the best 20 teams in the country.
Yeah, that's been the story all too often over the last couple of decades when it comes to this team. And next week we'll be talking kind of our review of the season and what we thought of the Panthers and what they got to do better come the off season in order to have a much better 2020
season in review next week. Real quick, do you have a bowl game you prefer, Vince?
I don't know if I have one that I prefer. Whatever one is the most winnable, I guess, is what I got to say. We'll talk about this when we talk about bowls in the bowl game matchup that Pitt's going to have. I'm of the opinion that these are just glorified exhibition games.
Has Narduzzi ever won a bowl game?
He has not.
Okay,
and
I didn't think so.
And I'm all for treating this like an exhibition game most of the time, but this year, with the finish that this team had and what could have been, I think winning this bowl game is going to be so very, very important, more important than ever. So this is a game that they got to have.
I'd say outside of the whoever's in the college football playoff and coaching wise, no coach needs to win their bowl game more than Pat Narduzzi. Is that hyperbole there, Pam?
I think it's a little bit of a hyperbole, but I mean they need to go out on a positive note.
Well, let's hope they do wherever they go. I'm going to say, just in terms of what I want to see bowl wise, 3 words: we want Texas. And I'll leave it at that. Unless you got anything bowl-wise in terms of hopes and dreams, Pam?
No, I just hope it's not raining. A lot of people believe Pitt doesn't play well in the rain. So if you want a Pitt win, and some people out there don't think Pitt plays well in the rain. So hopefully it doesn't rain.
All right. Well, we'll have our season in review next week. We'll know where Pitt's bowling. And we'll get back to some more of the reaction to that Boston College game in terms of what people were saying on the Pitternet in just a moment. But real quick, let's go to some of the other sports on campus. Pitt men's hoops is rolling. I mean, I think I'm going out on a limb. Not that much, but this is like the best week for Pitt basketball I could remember quite frankly, Vince. It's been great.
Yeah. After that embarrassing loss against West Virginia, this team has turned around. They've beaten 3 Power 5 teams in the non-conference. I understand that they may not be the most formidable competition, but they're Power 5 teams and wins nonetheless. They won the Fort Myers Classic over Kansas State and Northwestern, and then defeated Rutgers last night of this live on tape program. In the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Some of these games, not the prettiest, but specifically last night against Rutgers, this team's getting better and better, specifically Xavier Johnson. I really liked his play at the point guard position, Pam. Something that he struggled with, I thought, earlier in the season. Too many turnovers, difficult distributing the ball, but starting to really pick up his game.
Yeah, he's starting to learn how to play with the guys around him, and they're really starting to gel here as a team. But the one thing I noticed looking at the stats and watching the game last night against Rutgers is Jeff Capel's really tightening up the rotations a little bit here. Only 7 guys played last night against Rutgers, which means, just getting the same guys, a lot of experience playing together. You had Murphy and Johnson both had 38 minutes, so they almost played the whole game there. And you'd like to see that continue down the stretch as they not down the stretch as they open ACC play coming up here. I mean, I know they had that weird Florida State
Reopen.
yeah, reopen. Yeah, like they paused
Yeah.
and now they're reopening against Louisville again on Friday night.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson, it's a work in progress. I still think turning the ball over a little bit too much, but you're also getting him, grinding on the defensive side of the ball, getting rebounds too. Pitt guards were like getting after the boards against Rutgers, and also dude needs to hit some free throws too. I mean, he's got to up that percentage, and I'm sure it will go up. But right now, he's kind of at his low point in that regard. And I like the tighter lineup too, Pam, like you brought up. I like seeing Hamilton out there a little bit more. I'm just so happy that Pitt's finally also starting to shoot the ball better, because that's how they're going to be in games. You cannot win with the low post players you have in terms of talent and size unless you shoot the ball well. And, Pitt shooting a little bit better over the past week, and I'm seeing Murphy's also got a mid-range game out of nowhere the past 2 games too, Vince. And if that keeps up, who knows, against Louisville, maybe they'll keep it within 10.
I don't know about that, but they have shot much better. These you alluded to a little bit, the rebounding from the guards, but also the big guys too. They've won the rebounding battle in all 3 of these matchups, Pam. And they're really only playing 3 big guys down there, Champagny, Brown, and Eric Hamilton. I don't know if this is the guy that the big man that Pittsburgh has been singing for all these years, but these guys are making an impact down here. They're not doing everything for the team, but they're not losing the game for them these past couple weeks.
I'm going to correct you a little bit here. They did not win the rebounding battle against Rutgers.
Oh, they did not?
No. It was slight. Rutgers had 40 rebounds. Pitt had 33. But it seemed like it because our guards were doing well, getting crushing the boards there. And this game came down to shooting and turnovers. Pitt had played a lot cleaner game of Rutgers, so maybe they didn't need to win the rebounding battle in this game against Rutgers. But they do play Louisville Friday night, the number 1 ranked team. And after Louisville, then they start to – it's like another pause in the ACC schedule. They play Northern Illinois, Binghamton, Canisius College. So another test for them on Friday night against Louisville. And Louisville, number 1 team, just beat Michigan last night as well. That game was on before the Pitt game.
Yeah, and they beat them wire to wire just about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a team that they got a team that Pitt always struggles with because of their style of play.
Did they win last year against them?
I do want to say that they did.
That was their biggest win of like the decade.
A huge upset.
Traditionally they struggle with them mainly because of the style of play, the pressing, and I think without really good point guard and ball handling, this is a tough team to beat. So I do, and only playing 7 guys. I mean, Louisville's probably got the ability to go much deeper than that. This is going to be a tall order for the Panthers. I don't see them winning this game.
Oh, no.
But it would be good to see them at least be competitive here. Then they're going to have 3 easier games before they open up the new year. Wake Forest, I believe, is the next conference game. I think that's January 4th, Alan, actually.
Wow.
Against Wake Forest.
Big game.
Yeah. So, they're after here, the schedule's going to get a little bit easier, and they're going to have to just build on it and stack as many wins as they can, because once they get into the heart of that ACC schedule, there are going to be no days off.
Oh, absolutely not. That January 4th it's going to be hype. The Pitt basketball team has a lot of youth and energy. Jeff Capel's harnessing it. all across the country, anywhere you read about Pitt basketball, people are already praising the job he's doing. And let's hope it continues. If they even compete with Louisville, you could expect more of the same, and maybe for that to even get ramped up. Pitt looking like a bubble team as of now, and we'll see how it continues as the meat of the season gets underway here shortly. What about thoughts on the alternate jerseys before we move on to the rest of athletics? Pam, did you like the black and yellow? Black and yellow.
I like the black and yellow. The big P wasn't my favorite. I kind of understand it, but it was a little too big. I liked it as a one-time thing. I hope they don't go back to it this year, maybe again next year. Once a year they need to do that maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a good as a one-off. But yeah, that P, like you said, you understood why they were trying to do that. But it just didn't.
It didn't look right with the number or something. I don't know. It was weird.
I think I think it could have been. I'm not sure what I would have put on the front. I'd have to consult a jersey expert. But but I think something different there. It would have looked much better. Still good though.
I love the P, and I love I would have loved it to just say Pitt and have the full script. That's probably what you should put there.
And black, yeah.
I loved them. Yeah. I thought it was really cool. The crowd looked great too. Matched in with them, the Oakland Zoo. Here's what you do though. This was cool to see at the zoo, but why don't we bring back the city game? Both Pitt and Duquesne wear black and yellow during that game. That would be spectacular. Yes.
That's actually a very good idea.
Yeah, it is. And half PPG paints in yellow, half in black, depending on the year. They alternate what colors they wear every year.
And
how about it?
And then you've got a really good shot at recruiting every good baller that ever comes out of the Whitfield. If you're Pitt and Duquesne, if you do that, it's all about that. Really, those choices are all about luring players in to show them that you have a fun atmosphere. You do different things. It also gets the city excited, and I thought that was a really good marketing ploy by the Pitt basketball team. This isn't a marketing ploy though. When it comes to volleyball, they're just damn good and ready to just, I think, crush in the tournament. Number 6 overall, Pam, as the big tourney gets underway.
Yeah. I feel like they're in a very tough bracket doing my volleyball research here. They're in the Stanford bracket, and then they also have a potential matchup with Penn State in the Sweet 16.
Yes,
and an
rematch.
An interesting stat I saw, Stanford and Penn State both have the most NCAA women's volleyball titles, and they're in the same bracket as well. So it's a tough bracket, but Pitt hosts the first 2 rounds. They play Howard on December 6th, and then they play, hopefully, the winner of Cincinnati versus VCU against VCU. And then if they can make it to the end, they'll be playing at PPG Paints, where the national championship is at. We watched the selection show live, and a little disappointed with Pitt volleyball seeding, but they're ready. They've proven they can play with anyone in the country and can beat anyone in the country.
You could come out and say it. They got hosed here with their seed. By all accounts, this is a team ranked number 2 in the country by the Associated Press.
Won the ACC,
and yet they're a number 6 overall seed. I know only one loss on the year, which was a match that I believe went to the 5th and final set against Penn State. A team that they had swept, just a few days prior. So that's a little disheartening there. And then putting them with Penn State, and in the same region as a good Stanford team too. It seems like they did get hosed a little bit here, but I got a lot of faith in these Panthers. They've been showing a lot of fight all year. They haven't backed down from any challenges. So I'm sure that they're just chomping at the bit to get out there. December 6th. This Friday against Howard at the Peterson Event Center.
Got to watch it. Got to support them. And as Pam said, Pitt's going to be in it against whoever they play. So I look at it this way. Stanford and Penn State have to be saying, "Are you kidding me? We got these we got good seeds. We got Pitt in our bracket. This is not fair." So they're looking at it the same way. Group of death, you could call that.
That's immediately what I thought. Yep.
That's going down.
You know what
go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, you know what they say, Alan? To be the woman you got to beat the woman. So that's what it's all going to come down here. You're going to have to beat a good team at some point.
Pitt women's volleyball, you have to watch it, have to support it. Starting against Hard, and it'll be streaming on ESPN and all throughout the tournament. Make sure you follow because they're going the distance, baby. All right, last here, check in with the team on campus. It's the Pitt women's basketball team, Pam. And, well, as of the day this show comes out, later in the evening, they've got that team from the middle of the state, and it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be. Both teams are kind of in the same position. Both young teams rebuilding. Mm-hmm. Yep. One thing to point out here for Penn State, note for WPIAL fans, is McKenna Marissa from Peters Township High School will be playing for Penn State. She was the PA 6A Player of the Year, took Peters Township to the state championship and won. Very highly recruited. And so any Peters Township fans or WPIAL fans are familiar with this name. So she will be playing for Penn State this year and has been playing, and they can watch her against Pitt. So they play them today, Thursday, the day this podcast comes out, and then they play Stony Brook on Sunday, and then they have a break until after finals. But just to recap what's been going on with the women's team, they had a tough blowout loss against Ohio, did not play well defensively there in the Daytona Beach Invitational, but then they rebounded to win against Ole Miss, 58-50, just a day later. And Ole Miss, while they're not predicted to finish towards the top of the SEC by any stretch, it's still an SEC team. Pitt beat SEC by some stretch, by some people's account, is the best women's basketball conference. I would put them up there from top to bottom as the best. Pac-12 might be a little top heavier, but I still think SEC from top to bottom is the best conference. And they came out and they played Ole Miss really well defensively. Coach White said after the game it was the most complete game they played this year. And Amber Brown's really stepping up for the Panthers. Another double-double, rebounding down there. Bug did well. And all in all, they played a really complete game offensively and defensively against Ole Miss.
Yeah, Ole Miss, to win a low-scoring game against a team like that is going to be very good at rebounding, tough, physicality, that is just extremely impressive. Out-rebounded them 45-32, 16 offensive rebounds. This Ole Miss team, this is a program in the past several years that has given even the Tennessee Lady Vols trouble. This is a team that doesn't back down from anybody. And to see the Panthers go in there, that is one of the most impressive wins I think we've seen from this ball club in quite some time.
Yeah, I'd like to see them come back again against Penn State and win again and put a few wins here together. And I think they can do it against Penn State. I really do. I think both teams are in a similar position, young, trying to feel themselves out. I believe Penn State has a new coach this year as well. So I think it'll be a good challenge for the Panthers, and I think they can be victorious against Penn State and then finish up against Stony Brook and then come back December 17th.
Pitt women's basketball improving, big win against an SEC foe, and you gotta be hyped up anytime any team on campus is going to take on Penn State, and that's Thursday. So the evening this podcast has come out, 7 p.m. Check it out, of course. Pitt Women's Hoops. We're going to be trying to get you, hopefully, someone from the team on here. We've been reaching out to the athletic department, and when the schedule is right, we're going to be getting a representative from the team on here to talk about how things are going for Pitt Women's Basketball. And then also we'll be getting men's basketball guests and many more guests here in the future because we want to get word straight from the source on campus. So stay tuned for that here on the Hail to Pitt podcast, and let us know who you want us to talk to, because we're not afraid to reach out to them and say, hey, come on the show. It's a show by Pitt fans, for Pitt fans. You're at Pitt. Let's talk Panthers. Hail to Pitt, everybody. All right, let's go into what everyone is saying on the internet. This is my favorite segment, but this week I have a feeling it might get a little dark, Pam. I don't know what you were. I don't know what you were seeing, but what I was seeing wasn't fun to read. Are you ready to go around and hail the Pitt online?
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. It's time to hit the Pitternet.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
All right. This one's from P-Mizzle88 on Panther Lair, who said, quote, I will not attend another game as long as Nardizzi is head coach. This team is undisciplined, poorly coached, and a disgrace. I'm ashamed to say I am a Pitt fan. Ooh. To all Narduzzi loyalists, have at it. I don't care. This team is the Titanic, and keeping him is simply rearranging the deck chairs as it's plunging into the Atlantic. My goodness, this is just Panic at the Disco. Who found this gem?
I saw that one, and I really didn't like what I read there. First of all, Pitt's in the coastal, not the Atlantic. So I'm not too concerned about that. Giving up on this team is just ridiculous. You know, this is a long process here. A lot of damage has been done to this team at the early part of the decade, and it's taken a while. Yeah, we didn't quite get there this year, but I think there's still a lot to improve on. There's a lot to be excited about. So reading that stuff, shortly after a loss like that at the end of the season is just it's hurtful to read.
I mean, I'll tell you what, P-Mizzle88, I wouldn't want to go into a foxhole with you or anywhere where there's danger. You look like you tuck your tail between your legs and go running wherever. Jeez, oh man, what a panicker. Oh my goodness. All right, let's go to this next one. At I am Spilly on Twitter, who said college football is dumb. You play 3 games against teams you consider auto wins, can't play regional rivals because both are afraid of losing, play until Thanksgiving, then wait a month and play 1 game in a half-empty stadium sponsored by a regional chicken joint, and it goes on.
Or
Pam,
the Army.
Or the Army. Pam, you found this, and I think this sums up what a Pitt fan might be feeling in terms of the feeling of mediocrity and nothing matters maybe at this point of year.
Yeah, the one thing I will say I do agree with is not being able to play rivals. I don't know how you guys felt, but watching Pitt play Boston College last weekend when you had the Iron Bowl and all these other great rivalries, even like Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia dominates that, but still, like, it's a rivalry that means something. All these other teams play out of conference games. Clemson, South Carolina that last weekend, and I agreed with that. I mean, I do think he makes a little bit of a jump saying that it's a half-empty stadium sponsored by Original Chicken Joint. I mean, I don't think there's any Bojangles Bowls. I mean, that'd be great, but...
Well, Chicken Bowl. I think there's a Chick-fil-A. The Peach Bowl's Chick-fil-A, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's not regional, though. Chick-fil-A's a national brand.
Yeah. Come to the Primanti's Bowl. I don't know if that would
you
be
laugh,
good.
but I'm sure that's been proposed. Which would be, they're expanding a lot over the country. I was looking that up recently.
We're not going to have a Primanti's Bowl till Pitt gets a stadium on campus.
I'll say this. If you're talking about Pitt or even, probably, this was a very accurate post in my opinion. So I didn't have too much of a problem.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. That kind of sums it up. It is that those are things that are okay to be frustrated with. This next one, though, not so much. This one is from a Reddit post that was, "Can we please pull the plug on Narduzzi?" That was the headline, and this is from Alvarez09, user on Reddit, on Pitt Panther Reddit, who said, "I took a lot of flack last week when I criticized Narduzzi and suggested Pitt move on. However, a 4-4 ACC record is 100% unacceptable. I know it won't happen, but I wish there was another out for Pitt." Okay, the last part is true. It won't happen, and we all wish there was a way Pitt could find a guaranteed path to being better than mediocre in the ACC. But pulling the plug on Narduzzi would be catastrophic, and that's where we get to that point in the show where we approach that subject a little bit, because I have to tell you, I'm not a Narduzzi apologist. I think I made it pretty clear how boneheaded I thought some of the decisions were over the course of the season as we chronicled this entire football season with you on the podcast. But if you pull the plug on a guy like that, that's what we're really stupid college football fans, quite frankly, don't realize what this sport is all about. And it's all about two things, either money or consistency and grinding at it. And if you don't have the money, you just got to grind at it. And the fact that Narduzzi has had to have a start and stop with all of these offensive coordinators over the years is detrimental to his building a program and recruiting. It all goes hand in hand. Who wants to go play for it? Go ahead, Pam.
Part of it's his own doing, though, with these offensive coordinators.
Not Matt Canada. Not Matt Canada. The last two OCs, this year's OC, if you want to say that's Narduzzi's fault, I'm still giving Whipple time. That's a whole new system. You got to have a guy for more than 1 year.
Yeah, but it seems like he's also had falling out with some of these offensive coordinators, too.
Well, Matt Canada left because he was offered the world at LSU, right. And who could have blamed him?
No one blames him.
And Jim Chaney, he was left and hired by the Georgia Bulldogs.
I don't think he was going to be asked back, though.
Well, it may not have been, but don't tell me he's a bad offensive coordinator. I'd say Sean Watson was not a good hire. I guess it remains to be seen. I think the jury's still out on Coach Whipple, but you talk about he had by all accounts a very good defense this year. We saw when he had Matt Canada, he had a very good offense. Yes, there was good play calling, but if you look at some of the personnel he had on that team, it was much better than what he has now. So, I think it's just a matter of putting all this together and having a good offense and a good defense in the same year. And we're going to be talking recruiting a lot coming up in the next couple weeks as we get towards this early signing period. And I think there's a lot to like about this Pitt recruiting class here. I thought there was a lot to like about it last year, and it takes some time to get those guys in the system and get them matured and get them ready to play. But I think, in terms of recruiting players, it looks like he's on the right track. And I think we just got to give him a little bit more time.
And when I know we live in an instant gratification society, but when you're the Pitt Panthers and not the LSU Tigers, money is an issue. So unless you want to donate $1 billion to Heather Lyke and give that to her war chest to go out and do something, Pat Narduzzi needs to be given the ability to grind away and work out his own deficiencies, work out his team's deficiencies, recruit hard, and put a full effort into this. And you can't ask anything more than that, and that's what the guy's given. He made some questionable calls throughout the season. We'll see how he adjusts to that. Pulling the plug would be chaotic. And, I'm sure we'll talk more about that next week when we do our football review, but a lot of the fire Narduzzi talk was rampant online, of course, after a loss like that to BC. And we'd love to hear from you what you think on the subject. Everybody has an opinion when it comes to the heat check on Coach Nards at H2P Show. And before we wrap up talking about a big weekend for college football teams playing for championships, we do need to go around town, Vince.
Yeah, a lot of heated opinions, I'll say, after last week's game. Panthers still going to a bowl, but probably not the bowl they were hoping for.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the answers are saying.
Pitt don't deserve to even go to no bowl game in that.
Yeah, the furthest south they should be going is down Charleroi, maybe even Bentleyville.
Hey, you put up your Christmas lights yet?
Nah, I'm waiting till a nice day.
Hail to Pitt.
What the answers are saying.
That's what the Inzers are saying. we'll find out this Sunday where the Panthers are going to be going bowling. A lot still to be decided around the whole world of college football, Alan. We got the last rankings before the conference championship games, and there looks like there still could be some shakeups to come.
Oh, college football, don't you dare be sour. We don't need to wait for some computer to tell us who's the best teams. We've got an actual tournament underway, and I count this as a playoff week because it essentially is. These are play-in games into the college football playoff, a thing that we could only hope to do in video games about 10 years ago, Vince.
Yeah, this is new ground. We went from voting to a 2-team playoff to a 4-team playoff. And now, like you said, Alan, this championship week, this is do or die for a lot of teams. Very exciting.
It's beautiful. And, the rankings, who cares? We know who the best teams are. We'll see how they shuffle around. What'll be the big, debate and question? We can't argue about who deserves the number 4 slot or just yet because games get to be played this weekend. And then that's when we argue, and that's when the committee has the dubious task of figuring that out. But when it comes to the teams at the top, I expect a lot of chalk this week, Pam.
Yeah, I think Ohio State, I don't agree with them as the number 1 team here, but I do think they're going to beat Wisconsin. They're a 16-point favorite, number 1 ranked team. And I definitely think they're going to stay number 1, which I still think LSU should be number 1 because LSU's played a tougher schedule, but I guess the committee doesn't care what I think.
Well, if LSU beats Georgia, I mean, you have to think.
Do you think they'll jump them?
They would be the team who had the best or toughest schedule ever to get to a college football playoff. That has to count for something. They have to be able to get that game in Atlanta. It just makes too much sense. And I think it will happen if they win.
I hope so, because I think that's the right thing.
Yeah, LSU right now is 7-point favorite against Georgia at the Westgate. They would have beaten Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Florida,
A&M.
Texas, and Texas A&M. That's almost half the schedule of just really good teams.
It's insane. No team would have earned a national title more. I think I've said this before, more than LSU if they end up winning it all this year with that schedule, with what they've done. It's been absolutely insane. And I'm rooting for them. I'm flat out rooting for LSU to win it all because I want to see Coach O with that crystal ball in his hands at the end of the season. That crystal ball in his leathery mitts, Pam. It's going to be a beautiful sight, I hope. But LSU, Georgia, the game of the week. And 7 points seems like a lot to me. I think this is going to be a 1-point game.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I guess I'm still picking LSU to win, but I would pick Georgia to come within this number here, despite some injuries at wide receiver and suspensions of wide receiver.
Yeah, and DeAndre Swift's banged up too. Yep, he got banged up in the Georgia Tech game there. So I think maybe that's why. And Georgia's been solid all year. The past few games have gotten going early on. They looked a little sloppy. So I think maybe people are still thinking that. But then we also have Oklahoma Baylor. Oklahoma and Baylor are both in position to maybe jump up into that 4th spot if Georgia loses. I think we're all in agreement. If Georgia beats LSU and Clemson beats Virginia and Ohio State beats Wisconsin, there's your top 4 right there.
Yeah, as is with...
If Georgia wins, the top 4 are...
No, if Georgia wins.
If Georgia wins, yeah.
Yeah, if Georgia wins, the top 4 stays the same, and it's just going to probably shuffle a little bit. But Utah, Oklahoma, Baylor are on the outskirts, so they're obviously all rooting for LSU to win. I got LSU winning 41-40, just for the record. Wow. 1 point in a high-scoring SEC affair, legendary game. It's going to top Alabama-Auburn from last week, and I don't know how you do that with the greatest finish in football history.
If that's a score, I'm still going to pick Georgia to stay at number 4, even though they lost.
Really?
You think?
Yeah.
2-loss Georgia over a 1-loss Big 12 or Pac-12 champion.
Can I I'm going to give some context to Vince's ridiculous. This team should be in the playoff. 2 years ago, he was making a case for USC to be in, and they were like 10th in the nation and had to jump like 5 teams. And
he just likes chaos.
For weeks, he kept talking about how USC should be in. So I don't take
some men just
he
want to
says.
see the world burn.
Georgia, they would have beaten Florida. They would have beaten Auburn.
That South Carolina lost.
They would have beaten Texas A&M. They would have beaten Notre Dame.
They have that South Carolina loss.
Okay.
And Oklahoma, Oklahoma or Baylor, they would have one loss too. And Utah, their only loss is USC. And I make the case that that's a better loss than South Carolina.
Okay, let's do it here. Let's make that distinction. We got a 2-loss Georgia who loses to LSU. And we got a 1-loss Utah champion. We got a 1-loss Oklahoma champion. Who gets the 4th spot?
Utah.
I'm giving it to Georgia. I don't think that'll happen, but I think it should be Utah.
My vote is for Oklahoma, and that just shows you how insanely difficult it's going to be for the committee, because that's probably.
What if it's Baylor?
If it's Baylor,
Utah would have to lose for it to be Baylor and Georgia, I think.
Why?
Because I think Utah's resume is a lot better than Baylor's.
Well, Baylor beating the team that beat them in their 1 loss, I think looks pretty good. And
you really only played 1 bad half against that team.
Yeah, all season long. I think Baylor.
Their non-conference is a joke, though.
Well, that's right, but is Utah's that great?
No, but it's slightly better.
Yeah.
Utah's was pretty easy too. Okay.
What about based on the eye test?
I'm gonna. Yeah, it might depend how the games turn out, but honestly, the Utah defense, as good as it is, I rather see one of the Big 12 teams in the playoff than them. But it's tough. It's so close. It's going to be one of the toughest decisions I think the committee's had to make yet. When that actually happens, maybe they're all rooting for Georgia to win. We'll see how those refs act in the SEC championship game too. Because an Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Georgia playoff would be highly entertaining. I'll give you that, Vince.
I think those are the 4 best teams right now.
Yikes. A 2-loss team over 2 1-loss champions.
How much can you, if Georgia loses to an LSU in a close game, how much could you really penalize them losing to one of the top?
They're not penalizing them for that. They're penalizing them for that South Carolina loss. That's where you're mistaking.
Yes. Huge penalty for losing to South Carolina, who is not a good team.
At home.
Yeah. That's an inexcusable loss. Inexcusable.
But I think they're going to put up a fight. I think they're going to put up a fight against LSU. I think we all do. What about Pac-12, Utah, Oregon? Do we all think Utah's going to take care of business here?
Not necessarily. I mean, the Oregon offensive line, here it is, your moment. You're going up against the best front you're going to face. And you're, in this big game, maybe, Herbert finally has that game where he shows what the hype's all about. Cause I still haven't seen it all season long, quite frankly, but, I think it'll be, competitive, and I'm going to pick Oregon actually to win, by 2 points. I like, When it done, I'm going to go with the offense I trust more than the really good defense in this environment.
Oregon a 6.5 point underdog right now at the Westgate. I look for this to be a very low scoring game, and maybe Oregon to cover this game. And it'll be interesting to see, even if Utah does win and it's a low scoring, an unimpressive victory, even though it's over a good Oregon team. Is that still enough to keep them ahead of the Big 12 champion?
I'm going to pick Utah as well, but I think they're going to win by 7. I think they're going to win by 1 full touchdown here.
Okay, real quick. What if Virginia or Wisconsin win? Then what happens?
Then I think Ohio State stays in no matter what. I think Clemson drops out.
Do you really?
They don't want us in. You heard Dabo. They don't want them in. They got to win 300 games in a row just to get in.
If they would drop Clemson out Oh my goodness.
I'm just telling you what I think would happen. I don't agree with it, but I think they drop them out. Because I think they look at the ACC as a terrible conference.
They do. Clemson's just looks so good.
I know they're a 29-point favorite. They're going to take care of business.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think they're the best team right now with the way they're playing.
Can I say something real quick? I'm cutting you off. I hope that it's not LSU 2 and Clemson 3. I hope they don't play in the semifinals. That is what the national championship game should be.
You got to think that whoever
Buckeye fans come at me. I don't care.
LSU and Ohio State, those teams got to be shaking in their boots if they end up as that number 2 team. I don't think anybody, neither of them want that because then you got to go up against 2 really good, really elite teams as opposed to maybe just one.
I mean, I think whoever draws the college football playoff is in for a good game. I think we're going to see 2 great semifinal games.
Yeah.
This is really even matchups. With no Alabama in there, I just can't pick a blowout. I can't pick a team to get blown out in the college football playoff when we get there. But we have championship weekend first, and that's de facto playoffs, if you ask me. Real quick, Vince, as we wind down, what about Army Navy?
That'll be the following week, and I'm very excited for that game. We'll be giving our opinions on it next week.
Yes, we will. Plus, Pitt football season review. We'll know where Pitt's bowling. We'll react to the college football playoff being set, and we'll of course do our check-in with you on the Pitternet and how hoops are doing and where volleyball's doing in the tournament, Pam.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the volleyball team start their journey for the championship.
Rock and roll, everybody. Thank you so much for subscribing to the show. Please leave a review. Tell any Pitt fans you know about the program. And get involved at H2P Show on Twitter and Instagram. I forget anything there, Pam, or can we head off into this championship weekend? We're all going to get together and have a great weekend watching those games.
Yeah, can't wait. Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt, everybody.